Hello everyone, welcome back to another stream on Fantasy Football Scout. Do let me know if the audio is okay, lads. Today will be something a bit different. Today, unfortunately, I'm not joined by Gianni Battici. Today will be a solo pod, but that's fine with me. I said I would take it on and still display some of my thoughts going into the game week. I'm just adjusting the audio to make sure everything is alright. What did you make of the new audio or of the new intro for Fantasy Football Scout? It was really nice, and shout out to the guys who made that. But yeah, like I said, today will be something a bit different. I'm going to try be as interactive as possible because I am on my own today. So what we're going to cover today is a lot of questions that you guys might have. I know we're recording this before the games on Sunday. Blessing and a curse, we might get some of my opinions before any knee-jerks arise before Sunday closes out. Or it might be bad because, a lot can change between now and then. We might get some major injuries. But I'll give you some of my thoughts after Saturday's games, having digested what happened yesterday, of course. And as you know, I am a bit more differently set up than many other managers. So it is going to be an interesting talking point. And we're going to cover things like what to do with João Pedro. Who should you move him on? Is it as easy as going to Jean-Philippe Mateta? Is Arsenal defence essential now at this point in the season? Where, of course, we got the team news, and to be honest, let's get straight onto that because I want to pull up some of the teams going into this game week, as this was probably the biggest talking point before game week 9 started. And of course, I will show you my game week 10 team and how I'm set up for the future. So let's move straight on to Arsenal's lineup. So in front of you, I have Arsenal's lineup, and again, I'll be getting back to questions. We'll have a section open for that. But full team for Arsenal today: Ray on goal, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Royce, Zubimendi, Eze, Saka, Trossard and Gyökeres. So not missing anyone out of the lineup. Again, there were doubts about Saka and also Gabriel missing training. But as you know, Arteta loves to play these mind games. So nothing to worry about in terms of Arsenal assets. And again, this will be a very fun game and I will be watching it at 2 o'clock. So let's look at some other lineups. I have them here. We have Crystal Palace, of course, full team as well. Richards is back in the lineup after missing midweek. Daniel Munoz, of course, and Jean-Philippe Mateta. Also, Ismaila Sarr in the lineup. We have Nottingham Forest, of course, full team again. Savona is in this time with Jesus. And then the regulars like Anderson, White, Iliman, Ndiaye, and we also have Nico Williams and Sells. I don't imagine at this point in the season too many have him. And then we also have Bournemouth, who of course a lot of people own this game week, whether it's a Petrovic, a Senesi or a Semenyo, they're in. And Krupi Jr. does start, and so does Kluivert. Interesting talking point for today is if Bournemouth get a penalty, who will be on him? If you're asking me now, I would say it is likely going to be Semenyo with his form. And then lastly we have Manchester City, again full team. Phil Foden's in, Erling Haaland, Mateus Nunes starts again with John Stones, Josko Guardiola's back in the team, and Tijani Reinders, which a lot of people still own. So they're the lineups for the day. Let's see how I'm getting on currently, and I'll have to quickly fix this screen. Sorry, bear with me for a second. And I'll pull up my game week 9 score. Here's my game week 9 score. Let me quickly adjust the camera. We're fixed. So I'm currently on 34 points. And I'm currently 200k in the world. I'm going to make this as an enjoyable listen to for anyone who has listened to this back. Again, bear with me. I am doing this solo. So adjusting to the Fantasy Football Scout solo pod. But currently on 34 points. Again, I don't want to say too much about the rank, but we're 200k before the biggest ranked threat of Erling Haaland plays. He's currently 190% EO, and I do own him, of course. Let me run through the team from goalkeeper to the bench. So on goal, I've got Nick Pope. He's picked up 3 points so far. 3 to back in Joe Rodon, who's picked up 13 points. Chris Richards and Timber. 4 in midfield with Eze, Kudus, Salah, who netted a 6-pointer. Of course, I have the armband on him, so 12 for me. Enzo, who's after blanking. João Pedro, Mark Guy with 2 points each, and Erling Haaland. On the bench, I decided to bench Sarr. I've benched Mukiele and Anderson, and of course Dubravka on goal. So as of now, Not too displeased with a massive haul from Roden, of course. He was on for a 17-pointer before they conceded late in the game. And Mo Salah, who I captained, who came up with a nice 12 points, which, to be honest, let me get straight into this, because when you look at my team, I got a lot of comments about Mo Salah. I feel like people are forgetting that I also watch the games. I completely agree. Mo Salah has been absolutely off it this game week, or not this game week, in this season so far, from the first 9 game weeks. And it wasn't any different in this game versus Brentford. As much as Mo Salah has been bad, I want to say Liverpool have also been really poor. Again, what's that? 4 league losses in a row. And Annie Slot has even said it's not been good enough. Virgil van Dijk has said the same. We can talk about Salah all day long about how poor he's been, but I think it is a collective, and the dressing room in Liverpool, including management, doesn't look too great. I mean, you have a declining Salah and declining Van Dijk, who, of course, are massive players in the dressing room, coming down to their last year on their contract. And they haven't been living up to the expectation that we're used to. Salah usually brings Liverpool out of any ruts that they are in, coming up with big moments. And again, he did have that little moment in this game versus Brentford after not doing anything in the large majority of the game. Again, I felt like Florian Wirtz could have scored also. And Salah just with a moment of brilliance. And we know Salah can do this. And in any given game, in any given moment. And I didn't pick Salah because I thought he was just suddenly going to pick up the form and come out with a 24-pointer. For me, Liverpool are still the best attack in my eyes. They've been so poor, but they're still coming into games with multiple goals, and they're projected to score multiple goals on a weekly basis. Now, again, going back to my wildcard 8, the large factor of me bringing in Mo Salah was because the fixtures do turn. And if I quickly bring up Liverpool's fixtures to come, I know I keep talking about it, and again, lads, I will be getting back to as many questions as possible. Good to see so many in here before the games that kick off at 2 o'clock. Well, Liverpool, of course, do play Aston Villa at home. Then they have the difficult game of Man City away, before game week 12 playing Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Sunderland and Leeds. So it was a long-term play. Again, I don't have as much emotion built up in Mo Salah because I've not owned him this season, bar when I free hit. So I come from a different point of view this time around, and I can understand if you think Salah is an immediate sell. For me, it is for the long term, and I want and thought that irrespective of the early sub versus United, 85 minutes, my thought process going into the game week was that I'd be quite hopeful of 90 minutes of Salah regardless, because of course he went to play 2 weeks on international break in Egypt. So I didn't think with the benching midweek in the Champions League that it would be too damaging on him starting Brentford. So was definitely hopeful of having Mo Salah. What I would say on him, again, I know I'm still going on about Salah and we have lots to discuss. For me, what it comes down to is he is still seems to be getting 85 to 90 minutes in the Prem. And for me, that's all I need. And he's also on penalties. Again, Liverpool are going to score goals. Alexander Isak, of course, out. Ekitike started up top with Cody Gakpo and Florian Wirtz in the 10. I must say, Wirtz did play quite well in my eyes. He should have scored. Salah was quite poor. Szoboszlai wasn't great with the ball. I feel like his short passing was quite disappointing. And also Cody Gakpo, who's been great as of late, wasn't there at the races today. And Ekitike and Salah look quite isolated, to be honest, with how Brentford set up. And it was interesting how Salah was trying to get involved in the game. He actually started drifting centrally in a 2 with Ekitike. So, as of now, definitely disappointing performance from Salah. Again, getting a yellow card and just a goal with no bonus points. But with Villa at home, City away, and then the great run of fixtures that are to come, I'm happy to hold on to him. And I know you'll say Salah's done, but that's fine with me. The other option, of course, is potentially Bukayo Saka. But let me quickly keep talking about some of my picks who have played this week. Nick Pope, of course, who conceded. Newcastle looked quite decent. Nick Voldemare is definitely one on the radar. Joe Rodon, who came up with a 13-pointer, like I said briefly. But he was actually really, really good. And unfortunate to concede late in the game. I mean, West Ham didn't create much at all. Paqueta, of course, scored that offside goal, which didn't count. And let me talk about Chelsea next, which is a big talking point for my own team. I decided to play Mark Guy this particular game week against Sunderland, João Pedro and Enzo. And they were largely disappointed. Again, João Pedro and Mark Guy weren't involved in this game at all, really. Enzo was. He had a few shots from inside the box and outside. But wasn't great overall. I mean, Sunderland were really, really good. And again, no red card for Chelsea this time round. The main talking point for everyone is, of course, João Pedro. So, let's talk about João Pedro. Where do I stand? Again, no shots on target once again. And very little shots in general. For me, I can definitely understand why you would get rid of João Pedro. I feel like even with the good fixtures for Chelsea, it doesn't matter if the fixtures are good if your striker's not getting shots on target. And even with the warning signs this season, him overly performing his expected goals, maybe there was an argument to not go there in the first place. And any Chelsea fans in chat, let me know what you think about Pedro, because you might be looking at this from a different perspective. But for me, again, he got the early sub as well. Not ideal. And from a player at 7.5 million, you probably do expect a bit more from the likes of a João Pedro, who is a big name player, of course. But when you look at the other options, like a Nick Volomade and Jean-Philippe Mateta, who are both on my radar, big chances galore, and they've been doing it consistently now. And I'm seeing a lot of rage about Pedro in chat. I can understand it. Again, 60% EO at my current rank. So yeah, I think, and we'll get onto it in just a second, my game week 10 transfer plans and my team selection. But Pedro with Tottenham coming up, and then Wolves, who is definitely a very nice game for Pedro. I mean, I think there is definitely two sides of the coin. For me, it is a bit different. I've not owned João Pedro for 8 game weeks. I've owned him for 1 game week. I've only owned him for wildcard 8. Irregardless, I am looking at those blanks I'm saying and questioning myself, why did I pick him? And the reason I picked him was due to the fixtures. I would classify Chelsea one of the top 5 attacks in the league. And, as poor as Pedro's been, maybe with Liam Delap coming back, do I maybe think about holding on to Pedro? Like, if I quickly run through their fixtures, and I know he's been really poor, lads, I don't knock that at all. But he has got Tottenham away. Chelsea are notoriously good at versus Tottenham. Wolves at home. Burnley, Arsenal, Leeds, Bournemouth, Everton. Those are great fixtures. Now, I know he's been really poor, but quality players usually turn up when the fixtures turn. And again, when you look at Mo Salah in my own team, I'm kind of on that wavelength of playing the fixtures. It's actually one thing I want to discuss this season so far. Normally, we would target the fixtures. Now, let me quickly bring up the Premier League table. I think this will be a nice talking point. But I think this is one of the strongest the league has ever been. And let me quickly pull this up. Sorry, lads. 2 seconds. There is the Premier League table. And we'll zoom in and crop it so it looks a bit nicer for you guys. So here's the table so far. Again, there are a few teams yet to play. On top of the 3 is, of course, Arsenal. Second, Sunderland, which are a massive talking point so far this season. City, United and Bournemouth. First off, my question to you in chat, and anyone who's listening back, do leave it in the comment section. Do you think this is the most competitive the league has ever been? Now, when I say that, again, sorry, Wolves are at the bottom there, and I'll quickly crop them back in. But when I look at the league so far, of course, Arsenal are the standouts, and we're not expecting Arsenal to win the league, but we're saying they're more likely to win the league than not at this point, and it is definitely in their hands. Now, this Crystal Palace game will be a massive one. Crystal Palace, who are great versus the top 6 sides, I would say. So it's definitely a big test for Arsenal, and it is at home, so they'll be expecting a win, any Arsenal fans, and I think this will be an interesting watch. Next is Sunderland. Now, when I say it is the most competitive, the way I compare it is, of course, we have the most European places this season in the Prem. We have, of course, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Tottenham, and Newcastle in the Champions League, with Crystal Palace, Forest, and Villa also in those European spots. And you look at the teams who've come up, the likes of Leeds and Sunderland. Sunderland's spending over 140 million this time around coming into the league, and we've seen that last season or the season before, where Nottingham Forest done that. And the teams that are struggling this season are the likes of a West Ham and Wolves, who've been really, really poor. But even those type of teams have quality players now. When I say quality players, I mean the likes of a Jared Bowen, Paqueta. Wolves have a Strand Larson, of course, and they've not quite got the recruitment right, but the league is so competitive. And you look at the likes of United, who of course don't have European places this season, and at Bournemouth and Newcastle. I mean, the quality this season, Everton, who've even looked well in terms of recruitment, with Iliman and Jai stepping up this season, and Jack Grealish, who has been phenomenal so far. I think the quality this season is second to none. Especially when I consider, how I would put Sunderland against any other promoted sides in Europe. But, I'd fancy Sunderland's chances. Same with Leeds. So the quality this season is definitely there. Now, it is still early days. We're only, 8 or 9 weeks into it so far. But for me, I think that's why we look at the likes of a Villa, who have, quote-unquote, been struggling so far, and then go on a bounce of 5 games in a row. Same with United, who started the season poorly, and Liverpool this season. I feel like it comes down to how hard it's been this season to pick up points. Same with Tottenham struggling again. For me, Tottenham are in a different bracket this season. We are in transition with a new manager. Front three is completely different this season. The results from Tottenham have been there this season, of course, but the performances haven't. A win today could bring us into second, which is weird to say when you consider the atmosphere around Tottenham. It's just the expectation from us fans is definitely higher when you look at the quality of players we have in Xavi Simons, Mickey van de Ven, Mohamed Kudus. But we just need to see a bit more. And just on Tottenham, what I want to see today, and I know I'm getting sidetracked from an FPL perspective, but this will kind of leave you largely in where my thought process is, and my point that I'm getting back to when I'm speaking about the fixtures. When I look at the table, and Tottenham, for example, we've a lot of new players trying to gel. Thomas Frank talked about this. Same with Liverpool. And when you look at the teams who are doing decent, you have the likes of Bournemouth, and again United, who don't play European spots. But I do want to see. I think as the weeks go on, and we start seeing these teams start to gel a bit more. By the way, just on United, I think they are definitely a decent attack at least. And if they can shore up that defence, I think they'll be in those European spots this season without a doubt. But yeah, just going back to my point on the fixtures, the type of manager I am as I close this this league table, I largely try chase fixtures. When I say that is I pick a lot of my players due to the fixtures. Now, where it hasn't worked out from my point of view is Sunderland have been really, really good this season so far. And if I look back to my, game week 6 or 7 team, I believe it was, I had chosen triple United versus Sunderland at home. Now, of course, Brian Mbeumo got 1 return and so did Bruno, but targeting the bottom teams have been poor. And this week has kind of stung me. So Enzo, Pedro and Mark Gee, of course, versus Sunderland. Not great. And again, maybe it was a mistake because all the signs were there with Sunderland doing well. Now, that's not to say that they will keep this up. But you never know. And at this rate, you definitely look at Sunderland to be on, I would say, between 10 and 15 minimum. So fair play to Sunderland, of course, as Peter says in chat. Who do we have left to play then? Of course, I have Jurien Timber and Erbeshe Eze. Now, I am a hopeful Timber and Eze owner, of course. With Ben White being out, I think Timber becomes one of the best picks this season, for sure. He comes in at that price point, who is significantly cheaper than Gabriel. Now, you might say Gabriel is starting to pick it up on DEFCON and he might be worth it. But I feel like Timber has his own type of goal threat and assist threat. So definitely happy as a Timber owner. Eze, for me, I feel like I wasn't too worried about the 60 minutes he got last week. Again, not ideal. But for me, I feel like Eze will still get 70 plus minutes now after the international break is over. And I'll have no worries about Eze until the next international break comes in and Odegaard comes back into the team. Now, I know there's a lot of frustration. Again, let me know, Arsenal fans, if you agree with this. But Martin Odegaard, he's not really been up to how good we know he can be. I think particularly when we talk about goals and assists. So Eze, I feel like, could even solidify his spot in this team if he has a good run of games. Now, when we talk about Arsenal, and one of the biggest questions now is, are double Arsenal mandatory going forward? You know, they play Burnley in game week 10, Sunderland in game week 11, even Tottenham in game week 12, which I am dreading as a Spurs fan. And I think, you know, even Arsenal's defence is becoming fixture proof. They are that good and they just seem to be able to nullify whatever attack it is they play. Now, today they play against Crystal Palace's Ollie Glasner, who are the best attack in terms of XG and chances created when you look at them like that. So it will be a big test for Crystal Palace and Arsenal this time around. Again, Erebeshe Eze playing against his old team. Let's move on from Arsenal and talk about Tottenham again, Mohamed Kudus. For me, as a Kudus owner, I'm definitely happy owning him. I feel like he's always going to get, 90-ish minutes. Now, when I say 90-ish minutes, 85 plus. And I feel like the fixture congestion coming up for Tottenham and the 3 or 4 day turnarounds that are coming up, I still feel like Thomas Frank will manage him really well and he'll still be getting 80-ish minutes. So Kudus is largely involved in anything we do. Again, I still think when Thomas Frank looks at our lineup, Kudus is that player that is going to want to target if we want any goals or assists going forward. Because when I look at my Tottenham's attack specifically, I don't really see any other routes to goals because we've just been that poor. Wilson Odegaard, who I think has actually been quite good, he's just not that type of player who's going to pick up high goals or assists. And same with Tell. Now, you have Richarlison, who's always going to pick up some big chances, but with Kolo Muani lurking around, I don't really see Spurs being appetising in any other department in terms of FPL assets. And going back to Mohamed Kudus, he's always largely involved. When I look at that game versus Villa, of course, he had that offside chance which he converted, but you just think we'll always be looking for Kudus. And same with the goal that we did score. Again, it was whipped in by Kudus before it was nodded down to Bentancur. So Spurs really need to get themselves together. I will be looking to get rid of Kudus because Spurs' run gets quite poor after United. Of course, we play Chelsea at home in 10 and in 11 we play Man United at home before playing Arsenal, Fulham, Newcastle, which are very poor fixtures. Now, if Spurs don't start to click in these next few games, I will definitely be looking to get rid. And lastly, Erling Haaland, who is against me this game week, who I've owned since game week 1, who's got massive price rises this season so far. Again, I always felt that Haaland, regardless of this fixture against Villa, you know, he's definitely a phenomenal captain this game week. What it came down to when I was looking at the captaincy was, is there a chance to do something different? One. And do I believe in Salah as an asset to pick up something in this Brentford game? In my mind, I thought yes. Again, hindsight is worked out, but he still played really poor, so it's something I will have to consider going into game week 10. And Erling Haaland, again, he's been the best striker in the league so far this season. 11 goals so far for Erling Haaland. But Unai Emery, in my mind, has been notoriously good against the top 6 in particular. Again, Villa were off the back of 5 wins when I was making the decision. Losing to the go-ahead Eagles, I believe. I don't even know what league they are from. Do let me know if you know. But Villa have looked better since their sloppy performances at the start of the season. And they play against City, where Pep has said that even the likes of Erling Haaland cannot keep this up for the season. And I thought this would be the game that he could potentially blank. So that rounds up the current game week 9 score so far. Again, I'm hopeful of this week. I'd be happy with a slight green arrow. Is it likely with 6 players already playing? FPL Stinky says, Dutch, thank you for letting me know. But I think I could still end this game week on a slight green. Again, currently 200k in the world, which I'm delighted for, of course, but my captain has indeed played. Let's see how it plays out, and I'm not too worried. So let's quickly bring up my game week 10 score, and I'll also start to answer some of your questions in chat. So start to put some of your questions in chat, because it will be a good way to discuss my own team and some of my thoughts with a lot of the talking points that you guys might have. So I go into game week 10 with 2 free transfers and 0.1 in the bank. Again, currently 200k in the world with only the bench boost left in my repertoire. Overall, I would say happy going into game week 10 with my current situation. I think the likelihood is that I'll be finishing the game week at around 500k to, I want to say 700, 800k worst case scenario. I look at the fixtures that I have currently. Again, I'm off the back of a game week 8 wildcard. And to be honest, I'm quite hopeful with 2 free transfers and 0.1 in the bank. I look at the likes of Nick Pope, Mukiele, Richards and Timber, and I'm largely happy. When I look at who I'm missing, I probably think a second Arsenal defender. But overall, with Richards, who's been phenomenal at DEFCON, and I actually think he's been one that's gone underneath the radar. I don't understand how he's not got a price rise at 4.5 million. You have Nordi Mukiele, who's playing right back against Everton at home. Again, Sunderland looked that good, so I'm very happy starting him. Again, unfortunately, I've got Anderson on the bench with Wolves at home, which I'm unsure of his status going into this game week. I will be keeping a firm eye on him, of course. And by the way, before I continue, do hit the like button and subscribe, lads. And if you aren't already following me on Twitter or subscribe to my YouTube channel, do subscribe to me at FPL Chai on YouTube. We're closing in on 10k subscribers, and if you are enjoying these videos, of course, do let us know in the comment section what you like and how we can make them better. Of course, again, it is solo this time around, so something a bit more different. But yeah, I think the main thing this game week is Mateta or Voltemade. Let me quickly talk about first off Salah and my own decision this game week. Salah is the big talking point for me, and alongside him is João Pedro. When I look at a potential move for me this game week, I look at 2 things. And thank you, Offcore, for adding the channel in the chat, closing in on 10k, like I said. So do support me. If you are enjoying these streams, as usual, I think the obvious one, when you look at my team from an outsider looking in, is Mo Salah out. And when you look at who to bring in, you could do 2 things. You could bring Salah down to a Bukayo Saka and do something a bit different and double up on the Arsenal attack where they play Burnley and Sunderland. Or you could do a second thing, bring Salah down to who would be my question when I look at a list of midfielders that I don't own. Of course, it is Bukayo Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Antoine Semenyo. None of them largely stand out. Again, you have the likes of Brian Mbeumo, who I did own going into game week 8 wildcard, who I got rid of, unfortunately. What a player, by the way, and I have to say he's been a standout in that United team. Doing everything right and has started the season great. But one of my things that I would be looking at would be bringing in Bukayo Saka for Mohamed Salah. Again, that would free up, 4 million in the bank. Let me quickly pencil this in. So that would free up 4.4 in the bank. And that would leave me do João Pedro to Ekitike. Now, I look at that move and I go, okay, that's really aggressive. Ekitike is one that I am a real fan of. When I saw him come on in that game versus United, he looked not just electric, but greedy. And as an FPL asset, that's what we look for. In this game versus Brentford, we didn't see too much from Ekitike because how they set up, and he was largely isolated. But for those glimpses that he did have, he was in and around the box. He's well able to get his head on the ball. You've seen the likes of a Kirkes, a Florian Wirtz, a Salah looking for him in that box. And I just think he looks so sharp. And if Isaac is going to be a doubt and with a potential groin injury for the long term, I look at Ekitike and I go, I'm licking my lips at that. Again, Villa at home, and it's the same reason I own Salah. It is bringing out a Liverpool asset on penalties in 90 minutes for someone who is probably on a bit more form. Again, I don't love that move, but what I do like about that is bringing out João Pedro, to be honest, and bringing in Bukayo Saka. So the next thing I could potentially do, and I have the exact amount of funds to this, and it just comes a week early for me, and that's why I don't like it. I spoke about on Wildcard 8 how I wanted to leave the bench boost later down the line, as we do have the 5 free transfers. One thing that I can do is bring Ekitike up from Mark Gee and bring Salah down to Saka. Now, why I find that really interesting is everyone is going to sell João Pedro. Now, when I say everyone, I mean it looks like absolutely everyone. What this move lets me do is hold on to this João Pedro for Tottenham away, which I don't fancy really, because Tottenham have kind of shored things up as a defense, and in general, I think Tottenham have been decent from a defensive point of view, and I think we're only going to get better from that standpoint. Again, we're really lacking from a creative aspect. But if I can hold on to João Pedro and bench him this particular game week, stick in Ekitike and bring in Saka, who plays Burnley, my differentials will be triple Arsenal and double attack. And in game week 11, go and play João Pedro Wolves at home, where no one will be on him, and I'll have triple Arsenal attack or double Arsenal attack for Sunderland away, which I know we spoke about not targeting Sunderland at this point, but it's still a decent fixture. Again, it would mean I have Ekitike playing against City, but for me, City can be leaky. And what I think is quite interesting, the way I compare Liverpool at this current point in the season is quite like City last season. Being very, very leaky in defence is, the likes of a Kirkes and Connor Bradley, who've just not gone to the races just yet, and they don't look comfortable. Whereas the likes of course, a big talking point would have been Trent Alexander-Arnold, who isn't quite reliable defensively, but quite important what they do in the build-up. Just to go to a question, Cody, he says, Chai, transfer suggestions, João Pedro, Foden, Reinders, Kudus, transfer to whom? For me, I would probably be getting rid of João Pedro. I would like to see Phil Foden and Reinders today, as I think they've been quite good, even though they've not been returning. I have to say, they've been impressive. Okay, maybe not Reinders, but if Reinders is getting the minutes, that the expectation for an asset has to be he's going to be an 8 attacker. I want to see a bit more from Kudus today. I wouldn't be mad on transferring him out. I still feel like if Spurs are going to do anything, it's going to come through Kudus, and he comes in at this price point where it's really interesting. So that's to answer your question, Code Knight. I know you do have 4 free transfers, but I wouldn't be inclined to get rid of him as of yet. So Ekitike and Saka is definitely an interesting one if I were to get rid of Salah. But my current feeling on Salah is I don't feel like getting rid of him at all. I actually feel like he's a nice little hold. Again, he's not ideal, because he's been so poor. But I still think he could be very, very good in this run that are to come for Liverpool. And again, my standpoint on him has been that as long as he's getting the minutes, I'm happy to hold on to him. So that's where I am on Mo Salah and my other transfers. The other thing I could do is to just bring out João Pedro. I have 0.1 in the bank, which I fortunately have. Again, a price drop on Marquis, which is not ideal. But bringing in Jean-Philippe Mateta, who is the standout striker on penalties for Crystal Palace and has been in good form recently, gobbling up all the big chances for Palace. He plays Brentford at home, and then another home fixture with Brighton, and then away to Wolves, home to United, away to Burnley, away to Fulham. No reason, or understandably so, why a lot of people, not only myself, are looking towards him. And also, Palace at this point in the season probably look fixture-proof in terms of how we view them as an attack. Again, I'm saying that as I've benched Sarr this game week, but I still feel like they're great. And to answer FPL Sharp's question, he says, Chelsea are the biggest dilemma right now, along with is 4 or even 5 at the back the best strat? Strikers are missing. Yeah, when I look at a lot of the best teams so far this season, a lot of them play 4 at the back, 5 at the back. With some of the big names like doubling up on the Arsenal fence, Jurriën Timber and Gabriel. You might have Daniel Munoz or even a Chris Richards, and then one of Mukiele, Joe Rodon, who've been phenomenal so far this season. I would say yes, it is definitely viable. I think we're getting to the point of the season where teams will start to solidify. When I say teams, I mean particularly the bigger teams. Will try to get the defense sorted first before they start looking at attack. It's one of the first things Thomas Frank has done since he came in. Of course, a big gaping hole in the defense since Ange Postecoglou left the team. And that's why we've not been great from an attacking point of view. You look at Arsenal, who are probably the best defence in the world. Sunderland, Brentford, Palace not necessarily. They've been not the greatest defensively, but even the likes of Richards and Minoz have been good for DEFCON this season so far and have their own attacking threat along with Gahey. Again, we've not quite seen Lacroix, and I understand if you're frustrated so far, but have to say, lads, 4 or 5 at the back is definitely viable, especially when you consider some of the midfielders. Again, not that they've been lackluster, but when you look at the likes of an Eze or a Kudus, who come in at around that 7 million price bracket, they aren't stand outish in comparison to the value that a defender might bring. Again, for 6 million, if you're guaranteed DEFCON, that's a minimum of 4 points every single game week. Providing you're not playing for a poor defence. Paul says, hey, should I thoughts on Van Dijk to Calafiori or Timber and Caicedo to Mbuemo and Sanchez to Roofs? Paul, I feel like that is a small bit aggressive for me. I don't mind the move of Van Dijk to Timber. I still feel like Liverpool's fixtures coming up are decent, so you're in that sticky position of either holding on to the fixtures with Van Dijk, and same with Caicedo, to be honest. I still think it is very early to judge teams off an international break. The narratives are changing week to week. Coming back from game week 7 and 8, we had lots of time, particularly 2 weeks, to think about what we wanted to do. Teams are going to come back sluggish from this international break, and that's why I'm probably going to give it 2 or 3 weeks before I make a harsh judgment on the likes of a Salah, who has been really poor, don't get me wrong. Spurs have come back. Eze, Sarr, any of the assets are people who went to are gone to big international breaks in Africa, for example. If Mateta scores today, that will be the transfer. So this is why I quite like these streams on a Sunday. I get to talk about some of my moves before a ball is kicked for some of the teams. And I'm not the type of manager to be knee-jerky. And I think that's what kind of, I wouldn't say separates me. Sure, I don't classify myself as an elite manager by any means. But when I back myself as a manager, of course, and you have to when you're playing the game. I really believe in the picks that I'm picking. For me, what it comes down to is I don't play with too much emotion. You look at Salah and how poor he's been. Why I've held on to him is because I still think he can turn good. Again, I don't think he's lost his ability. And Liverpool have great fixtures coming up. Worst case scenario, Liverpool have lost 4 games on the bounce. But Salah has returned for me. It is only up from here how poor he's been. Again, unless he starts getting a drop, which I don't see a likely occurrence, because who's going to play in that position? You have the likes of a Jeremy Frimpong, who is now out. So Bradley has to play right back. Sure, you might say Chiesa or Wirtz can play in that position, but I don't see Arne Slot benching Salah, in my honest opinion. Again, unless he gets a big 90 in midweek versus Palace in the Cup, I can't see him being benched versus Villa. Where was I? Yeah, so the other one is Nick Voldemade, who I do quite like. I have to say, since he's come into the league, he's looked a fresh of air for Newcastle. Great business. And by the way, we're just coming up to the 40-minute mark, but I'm going to carry this on because I'm actually enjoying the discussion and I want to get all my thoughts extracted to you guys and have you guys a lot to think about before the end of the game week. I don't want to base my decision based on what happens this game week. If Mateta scores today, phenomenal. But we know Mateta can do this in big games. He done it against City last season. He can do it against Liverpool. So I've no doubt he's a great pick regardless of what happens. And same with Sarr. They're a team that are going to get big chances. What I want to see from Palace today is how they set up versus Arsenal. That's more important than whether or not the likes of a Sarr, Mateta, Minoz, any of those return. If I see Daniel Minoz playing right wing versus this Arsenal team, and I expect Minoz will be quite busy this game week, but if he's playing in that position against a big team, and not only a big team, but the best team in the league, that tells me everything I need to know when they go on this fixture run with Brentford. Wolves, United, Burnley, and how they'll set up against some of those harder teams in general. So that's what I'll be looking at. And it goes the same with Spurs. Today won't determine whether or not I want to get rid of Kudus. Kudus could score a hat-trick or he could blank and not be involved. It's how Spurs set up and how we look in general. It's what I'm looking for. If Spurs are creating chances and we look a bit better, we're doing well with the ball, happy to hold on to Kudus because I largely think he's going to be involved if that's the case. And same with the likes of an Eze and Timber. Eze today, if he scores, sure, great. But if he suddenly is getting 60 minutes again, I'll have to look at routes out. And same with the likes of a Mohamed Kudus. So that's where I stand with my own team. Again, with 0.1 and 2 free transfers in the bank. If you were asking me now, I think the likelihood is that I don't do anything this game week. I know it sounds really boring and on the fence, but I look at this team in front of you, lads, and I actually don't think there are many holes in it. I'm actually quite happy. Now, João Pedro is definitely the standout problem in this team, but with the fixtures he has, I just think is a bit reactionary from myself. Even with him not getting the chances, I still feel I know how good Pedro, or how good of an option Pedro is in general on his day. Maybe just lacking a bit of confidence. And a good fixture run can change that. And lastly, just looking later down the line, lads, towards game week 11 and 12, of course, I will have Salah, who plays against City, and Haaland, who plays against Liverpool. I think 11 and 12 is where I could see myself making some big moves. And the reason for that is because, the likes of the Spurs start to have poor fixtures. Liverpool, who start to have great fixtures. And Manchester City, who of course play against Newcastle away in game week 12. But in 13 go on that run of Leeds, Fulham, Sunderland, Palace, West Ham. And Arsenal's fixtures start to drop off. And in a sense, from an attacking point of view at least, with Tottenham, Chelsea, Brentford, Villa, maybe that's debatable. And the likes of a Semenyo, who is West Ham, Sunderland and Everton, might be back on my plate. So a lot to be talked about in the later weeks, and I want to have my options open. Again, Mbeumo has to be one that has to be back on my radar. Again, I've really liked United attack and what I've seen so far from Amaron so far this season. Have you not learned about it's not about fixtures like Southampton? Yeah, sure, Anton. Again, it's not about fixtures. It is not. But when we talk about, the likelihood of a player having shots, I mean, you expect them to come against the worser teams. And it really comes down to game state. If a team is playing a low block and Pedro's not largely involved, well, of course he's not going to have shots. So I actually think, with a game like Tottenham, it might suit Pedro. And again, like someone mentioned in chat, Dr. Tottenham, for anyone who's not aware, is the fact that when you come play Tottenham, things change. And for some reason, players start to show up. So I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Apologies if I haven't got back and answered all your questions. But we are at this point of the season where things are starting to get into shape. Teams like Sunderland and Arsenal look really, really good. Chelsea, who are, not been phenomenal, but still decent in my eyes. Liverpool, who are, I wouldn't say in crisis just yet, but not far off it. Tottenham, who are finding their feet. United, who are looking good. City, of course, who are going to be the only other team, if Liverpool can't put it together, who can stop Arsenal. And Palace, who I'm really interested to see play in this game versus Arsenal today. So I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. I hope you'd enjoyed the solo stream. Unfortunately, again, no Gianni. Do let me know in the comment section if I've done well soloing on pod. Sorry, I can't speak. That wraps up the stream there. I've done an absolute... I've scuffed it. But let me know if you'd enjoyed the solo podcast, of course. I've tried my absolute best and tried to make it as interactive as possible with you guys. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope you'd enjoyed. And as usual, lads, I will see you in the next.